Please turn on sound. What we're seeing here are the two packages of Synergy Pro and Advion. Advion on the left, Synergy on the right. The nest is scalped. This is in order to allow the fire ants to become excited, and a card will be placed on top of that nest whilst excited, and I will place on that card, just for the sake of clarity, with a white background, the Synergy Pro on the left and the Advion on the right. The other reason for scalping the nest is to open up the larger galleries and allow the bait to be more freely taken down into the nest and in a far shorter time, and also it prevents any of the native ants getting anywhere near that bait. It's totally targeted to the fire ants here. The other advantage of opening up those galleries for quicker transport into the nest of the grain is that if we do have some rain, inclement weather, there's a good chance that that bait is already taken down into the heart of the nest and doing the job for which it was placed. And hopefully it goes without saying, this shouldn't really be done without protection, gloves, fully enclosed boots, long trousers, etc. For convenience sake, I've fast forwarded this video in a number of places. Obviously we can't sit here all day waiting for this grain to go. However, it should be noted that the grain was actually consumed, both piles, within 8 minutes. As you can see, I have skipped forward and frozen this frame just to demonstrate really the behavior, and showing particularly the feeding ants on the right hand Advion pile. Quite happy to sit there and feed. Skipping forward again, as you can see, the pile on the left is now slightly diminished. That's because the ants are now starting to cart it away, whereas the one on the right, the Advion, the fire ants are quite happy simply to sit there and drink it down, which is good, because that would suggest therefore that it will go down into the nest and be distributed to the other ants, as opposed to it going down into the nest, which does happen with baits, and the material is simply part of the structure of the nest. They build around it and use it as a building material. The ones on the left also, it's noteworthy that the Synergy consists of the dark and the light product there. The dark and the light, I'm advised by the manufacturer, are exactly the same in their active ingredient. It's just simply one is made as more of an attractant to lipid and the other more to protein. The light yellow being the lipid and the darker being the protein. And it seems that the fire ants prefer to take first the darker part of that bait. Again, I've skipped forward and also increased the speed of this video because it'll go on and on and on, but you can get the general gist of what's happening here. The fire ants are certainly in preference to the Synergy product, but there's quite an impressive gang up on that Advion taking in the bait, drinking it in, and that's encouraging. As you can see, I've skipped forward again a little bit, and I will increase the speed of this to shorten this clip again. What is very interesting in all of this, unlike the pile of the Synergy, the ants seem to want to spend a fair bit of time feeding immediately, and in competition with those that want to drag it back to the nest. So I can only presume that they will well and truly, with those that have gone back to the nest, feed on those grains rather than them being incorporated into the nest as a building material. I've skipped forward a wee bit. What I'm not doing here is speeding up from here on in this particular final take-up of the Advion just really to give an idea of how quickly this stuff disappears in real time. At this point also, I'll state why I'm doing this test. It's because I needed to know what the difference was in the efficacy of the bait that was being given away by BQ, which was the Synergy Pro, over the Advion, which I have used very successfully for some time now. BQ's FAST program, which is us in the suppression zone, were given these handouts. In this case here was Bunnings hardware stores, and I got a number of containers free and was able to trial them at home. However, I was getting quite a few failures with this Synergy, and we were seeing the same nest popping up again, one on top of the other, and quite a few side shifts. So I'm trying to understand what the difference is. Clearly, take-up wasn't an issue, and BQ had advised that this particular product was developed to be more attractive to fire ants, and indeed this seems to be the case. However, that extra attractiveness raises a problem, as I see it in the field, that if it is distributed on the ground and not in the fire ant nest, there's quite a high chance that the locals will find it before the fire ants. And so I did another little test. The next test you see here is fire ants taken from the same nest and placed into containers. The one on the left is a control, the one in the middle has 3 grams of Advion in it, and the one on the right has 3 grams of Synergy Pro. These are the products being weighed. What we are seeing here is 5 days later and the Synergy Pro, and as you can see it's quite healthy. 5 days for the Advion, there's normally no activity at all, but clearly this Synergy, and the only thing I've placed in these containers is water. So they've had to feed on the Advion in that case and Synergy Pro in this case. They've had no other alternative means of food. So results may differ had they had such a thing. We're looking now at the 12 days on for the Synergy Pro. And they're not looking too clever, but nonetheless there's still a fair bit of activity 12 days later. And as I say, if they had alternative food, perhaps they would look even more healthy and may have turned to alternate forms of food rather than that bait. They've been trapped with only that bait to eat. So, but it's the same for the Advion, and they were very quickly gone. Whereas here, 12 days, and I'm not too sure on how much longer they last, length of time, and the numbers that have survived is definitely a concern. Take-up of bait appears not to be an issue. However, Synergy Pro is, in my experience, and as here demonstrated, an inferior product for the successful treatment of fire ant nests. My experience thus far leads me to rely on Advion as the product of choice for treating fire ant nests. There is also to consider the public's experience whilst using these Synergy Pro baits which fail to remove fire ant nests. It may be ironic that this BQ incentive in giving away these baits may lead to those who try the product and where it fails to conclude trying to eradicate fire ants is a hopeless task. They may give up or start using products and methodologies that are harmful to the environment. Also, I take the opportunity to express the great disappointment that BQ, through their FAST program, have deemed that it is no longer necessary to give out fire ant bait to anyone other than to treat their own property. This is a reversal of their policy from last year when bait was given out and volunteers, such as myself, were successfully treating literally thousands of fire ant nests in our community. This policy by BQ is as misguided and damaging is that whereby they prevented anyone other than themselves from treating fire ants for over 18 years. And that policy has led us to the dire straits in which we are now finding ourselves in, and clearly lessons are simply not being learned.